Hey everyone, Canadians in particular, and I want to say to you Canadians, this man right here, he's standing up for your rights more than you could even know. And it's not just about gender pronouns, which is the dominant narrative that's been put forth because he refuses to follow the edicts, the mandates of the Ontario Tribunal or whatever, Human Rights Tribunal, or now with all the bureaucracy that's they're trying to force people this cultural Marxism. And I mean, you know, I won't even go into depth in any way, shape, or form on that particular subject, because if you want someone that's truly informed and has a much better way of presenting that information for you, this is the man for the job, not me, right? There are times in every one of us. I mean, I'm a pretty smart guy. There's lots of people that I know that are very smart guys and girls, right? And myself, like I say, when I recognize that someone has, much more in depth knowledge on a subject, unlike a lot of like the collectivists or the leftists, the modern leftists, the progressives, right, or the social justice warrior crowds, that everyone thinks that they know everything now. I still am humble enough, even though I have some pretty good background and I know I'm a pretty smart guy, but I am still wise enough to know that I'm going to step back because I recognize that this man knows what he's talking about. That's the problem that we function in today, and guess it probably falls back into even with the moral relativism, right? And what Mr. Peterson talks about, like postmodernism. But when you're discussing, there is such thing as right or wrong. The way the moral relativists try to paint things is there is no genuine right or wrong, but in reality, yes, there is. Now, there are some things that are open to speculation or interpretation or subjugation. They're subjective to certain influences, paradigms, and but there are some things that we can know objectively. And Jordan Peterson, as a psychologist, and not just a psychologist, but one of the leaders in his field, knows damn well what he's talking about. But even then, and National Post is usually not the publication that tries to paint conservatives in a negative light, although I know there's contributors from all sides of the political spectrum on the National Post, which is much more different than something like the CBC or the Globe and Mail, right? But this Norman DeBono from the Post Media Network, I'm not necessarily, I'll read through the article, so we'll see how he tries to paint this completely. But even the headline of this article alone, unless it's, like I say, I think a lot of the times it's done just like when you're standing in the lineup of your grocery store and you see some stupid tabloid with a ridiculous sensationalized headline, right? Is that what the media is doing today to just try to keep themselves relevant? Well, we know that is the case. So anyways, headline. Controversial University of Toronto professor gets warm welcome at Western Day after protests at McMaster. But controversial, there is nothing. I mean, if you listen to Dr. Jordan Peterson, and I will recommend right now, go subscribe to his YouTube channel. I mean, if you like intellectual narratives and dialogue, well, consider watching Jordan Peterson's YouTube videos. Consider that intellectual porn, okay? It's great stuff if you enjoy that. So go to Jordan Peterson or Dr. Jordan Peterson. Just type it into YouTube and you'll see, and then subscribe to his channel. And get ready to fill yourself with a lot of common sense and very in-depth, very astute knowledge in regards to the human psychology and the human psyche. Driven from McMaster University campus in Hamilton by an angry mob just the day before, Jordan Peterson was welcomed at Western University like a rock star. Well, that's the divide between progressives and conservatives, right? Collectivists and those who still believe in individual rights, limited government. That's what that comes down to, the great psychological divide. The controversial University of Toronto professor saw his hour-long speech interrupted only by bursts of applause from the more than 700 that packed the Natural Sciences building. His speech ended with a standing ovation, and after he was mobbed outside for selfies from the adoring crowd, mostly young men, more than a few sporting hats, declared, "Make America Great Again." So, once again, it's Well, that's the psychological, but it's also the political and sociological divide, right? Because men are not want to be dominated, and whether it's women or central planners, no one likes to be dominated. Well, men, I should say. Men do not, especially strong, independent men, right? Which would, I guess, would make up the bulk of conservatives and libertarians, right? But no one likes to be dominated or ruled over by people that they look, and they don't just look upon them, but recognize them as being below them intellectually, economically, right? Even maybe even looks wise and things. There's so many variables, but it's like when you look at people that seem to be or look to be and fit the description of being your inferior, yeah, it's kind of hard to want to be ruled over or obey the edicts of those type of people. Tyler Inglis, 23, from Sarnia, was one of them. Transitioning from woman to man, he came to protest the University of Toronto professor who had drawn controversy for refusing to use gender-neutral pronouns. That is, he refers to individuals as he or she instead of they. Oh no. Oh no. Actually, when we're talking about these kind of topics, what I don't understand is how come no one just brings in the fact that if there's someone in your class or in a university or someone they don't want to be referred to as he or she, well, okay, what's your name? What's your name? You were given a name, right? When you were born, somebody gave you a name. So can we just refer to you for your name? And fuck you, the biology aspect of it, right? That would remove all the controversy out of the equation. But once again, these people are so they're cultural Marxists. They're trying to create this as a political statement. It's all about dominating the narrative in reality. That's what we're talking about. That has drawn fire from the transgender community, and Inglis came ready to do battle, protest sign in hand. I was ready to disapprove of him, but pretty much everything he said I agreed with, said Inglis, who came to London to see him. There you go, right? So these are some maybe people in this person or he, she's, people around him told him one thing about Jordan Peterson, a bunch of bullshit, right? Bunch of fucking rumors, bunch of bullshit lies. Then he actually went and listened to what Dr. Jordan Peterson had to say for himself so he could see it with his own eyes, listen with his own ears, and he walked away or came away from it with a totally different understanding or interpretation of what Dr. Jordan Peterson had to say. That tells you a lot. When people are trying to shut people out of the conversation, like Jordan Peterson, when university people or students are trying to shut him out of the conversation or equation, yeah, it's not. I mean, think about it. What could you be scared of that he's going to say? He's not soliciting violence. I mean, listen to what he's got to say. They're scared because once people listen to him, they'll realize that, oh, he's got a way better. Oh, no, obviously, he's the one being more truthful, more objective. His shit makes way more sense than these social justice warrior crowds or these feminazis. So that's really what they're fearful. Mostly they're fearful of people actually hearing truly objective messages and interpretations of, the gender narratives, and they just don't want you to hear it. That's why they silence free speech. So really, and those are the ones that try to talk about others as if they're fascists. But I mean, when you're trying to silence and quell free speech and make a narrative so that it's universal, one voice, without any dissenters whatsoever, yeah, that's pretty fascist, right? He found him more inclusive than he expected. His message on the strength of individuality, a common theme in the talk, resonates with Inglis. Well, that's the thing. Listen, when libertarians are talking about that kind of thing, or people, even classical liberals, which that's probably where Jordan Peterson falls and lines himself with. I think I've heard him say it himself. But it's all about the individual. And every single one of us, no matter if you're black, white, Asian, Aboriginal, or even when you're talking, that's just your race or your culture and stuff. But no matter what portion or what aspect of your humanity that you pick, we're all individuals. So if you care about other people, no matter where they come from, no matter what their psychology, no matter what their ideology, no matter what their politics, it should always come down to the individual, because each individual can be pointed to and held to account. Collectives, it's just a big pile of fog. You can't hold a collective It's them. Well, who's them? I don't. Is there an exception here? Was it all of them? Right? No. Collectivism is that race to the bottom. It has to always been, and we've known this. It's been like it's a long process where we've got to this point today. But that's the advancement of the human intellect, of human knowledge. But it has to be about the individual. The minute you collectivize something, yeah, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be an underlying problem, and people are going to be harmed somewhere along the way. He's right. It's very much the individual, he said. At one point, Peterson said to the crowd, portrayals of him as transphobe are absurd, and that he has support among trans people not represented by activists and protesters. And what's Blair White, I believe, is I don't know, I guess like a trans person, he or she. I'm not sure how to probably consider himself a she now, but he or she has a YouTube channel, Blair. Go and check it out. All right? This is someone that's talking about, that's what I mean. You don't have to, no one is trying to, squish the rights of, like, I mean, these are people that are very, very small segment of society. And I mean, no one that cares about individual freedoms or rights, and Jordan Peterson is always one of those people, would be trying to squish or quell the freedoms or rights of these trans or even LGBT or the Q or whatever, all these terminologies. Basically, all he's really railing against is, no, you don't get to force me to accept your ideology. You're coming up with some bullshit stuff that don't line up with proper science, proper biology, or any of these things. So no, you're entitled to think as much as you want, but no, you don't get to force me to think or even say what you want me to say. That's really what he's standing up against. So there's not even, how's there anything controversial about that? Of course there isn't. Julian Bondi from McMaster University came to see Peterson in London after Peterson's Hamilton talk was cut short by protesters. And if you've seen that video, man, the man has patience, a way more patience than I could ever probably hope to attain. And thank goodness he does, because at least he sticks through it. And, he presents himself in a much better way than I could probably do, because, half hour, I don't even think I'd make a half an hour of this. I'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm fucking out of here. You're dealing with a bunch of kids. I'm not here to fucking babysit a bunch of morons, right? So yeah, I mean, there's a reason why I'm not a professor in a progressive university institution. I couldn't be able to handle it. Jordan can handle it. Good for you, man. Good for you, man. I'm telling you, that's where something that I lack in that department big time. I just couldn't put up with it. I just couldn't. I would have to remove myself from that situation entirely. If no one wants to listen, I just, like I say, I don't know. You have the patience of a god in that aspect. I did not expect the talk to go this way. I am from McMaster, and we had a huge protest yesterday, he said. His visit lasted like 10 minutes. It did not go well. But the speech from the professor, who has become the darling of the political right, based on his free speech mantra, was surprisingly centrist, he added. Well, of course he is. You're not going to find anything that people, myself included, I mean, a lot of us, that we're painted as these, whatever, right? But just listen to what we got to say and you'll understand. Now, with me, I use a lot of profanities and stuff, so people don't like that. I get that. But if you listen to the actually things that I talk about, there's nothing controversial about it. I'm mainstream when you're talking about what should be mainstream. But then in this weird world, this culture marketing that's been promoted and entrenched now, you got a lot of people come from old fucking Eastern Europe, right? These communists or these socialists that have been, filling up our colleges and universities with this kind of ideology, with this mentality. So I guess people, normal, common sense people like ourselves, right? Classical liberals, libertarians and stuff, genuine conservatives, they're seeming like they're all outrageously lambastic or out of touch with the norm. But in reality, that is not the case. You're just functioning in an echo chamber, in a bubble. So when you're in that bubble, everything outside, it might look different. But then when you get out in the real world, it's like, oh, wait a minute. No, it's the ones that are in the bubble that are trapped, right? You see a lot of Trump hats in there, but it was not really about the right or left, but the center. The pronoun issue itself has little focus during the talk, as Peterson made broader references to gender issues, from physical strengths to women's nervous system, how they are tilted hard to excessively emotionally to protect children. At one point, he stated women hit men more than women suffer violence at the hands of men, but men's greater upper body strength means only they pose a threat. And that is so true. I've seen that in my own life. A lot of women will beat the crap out of a man because they know that they can, if the man hits back, they can call an enforcer, which is probably going to be a man or another woman, but with a gun, right? So, but I mean, to use violence towards men and to expect them to just stand there and take it all the time, I mean, think about what that does to a man's psychology as well. But yes, women can be very much violent and use force just as much as men, right? They might not always win the battles, but they still have the pretense of using violence as force is still there, which is why you're seeing that propagated through government. They can't do it in the natural order in the natural world. Women know that they cannot beat men up in the natural world. Now there are exceptions to the rule. So what they've done is they've gravitated to use the power of mysticism, the power of the force of the state, of government, right? The overarching, the most powerful monopoly on the planet is the state, no matter what geographical country or landmass you live in. So they realized that, okay, I can't beat them naturally or physically, so I'll use the power of the state. I'll use violence as a means to oppose their ideas. So yes, as we know, women, I mean, look at Canada. Our prime minister is a feminist. A lot of the premiers are feminists, actual women feminists. The prime minister is a male feminist. But like I say, where they lack in the private sector, where they would fail, I mean, Justin Trudeau as a drama school teacher, yeah, he probably wouldn't be an alpha male in the real world, would he? No, not at all. A little bit on the thin side, kind of a pretty boy. Yeah, no. Nope, there'd be a lot of genuine alpha males that would have him sitting at the back of the bus in the natural order of things. But because the power of politics and the ability to use the force of your enforcers, right, that carry the guns, that have the monopoly for the country, well, all of a sudden now he's the alpha male. Like I say, turns nature upside down on its head, and you wonder why it's going to have massive negative consequences for the human race. Well, that's why. He took on Bill C-16, legislation to protect against gender identity and expressions, has prohibited grounds for discrimination, saying, I think there's only going to be supposed to be one saying there, but saying it is full of false claims. You can't make false facts law, he said. At one point, he called legislation that strived for equality reprehensible, drawing applause from the crowd. As for his employer, universities, they were not spared, calling them playhouses where students are taught to bray and protest and taught soulless nonsense. So, oh no, there's just a bit left. Let me finish on. He is an intriguing speaker. He was interested to listen to. He is an intriguing speaker. He was interesting to listen to. It went deeper than I thought it would, said Sean Killian, Western University student in political science. At one point, Peterson encouraged his audience to look inward at their conscience and even to be aware of the evil that exists in all. It was fantastic, said Maeve Sharkey, a Western student. I used to be a student of his in Toronto before I transferred here. I was impressed and so happy to see so many people here respectful of him. So yeah, go ahead. The whole point of this whole video is not just to cover this article, which is important, see the glaring discrepancies and differences in people's psychology and their ideology, depending on whether they consider themselves politically conservative or politically liberal. But in reality, take politics out of the equation. Listen to Jordan Peterson. Like I say, subscribe to his YouTube channel. Search him on Google. Read his articles. I mean, the man's a professor. There's all kinds of information that he's put out there and presented that you can read through. Go through it and tell me that this is not a man that's not just sensible, logical, but principled, morally and ethically. Not screw politics, right? I'm talking philosophically principled and morally principled. He even talks about religion, but he doesn't use religion as a means to indoctrinate people. He covers even that topic in a manner that I very much respect and appreciate. So give yourself the opportunity to learn from someone in this modern era that has a great mind, a great head on his shoulders, Subscribe to Jordan Peterson's YouTube channel. Listen to what he's got to say. And hopefully, after you have, you'll show some solidarity and some support for a man that's doing everything he can to maintain freedom of speech in Canada. It's a Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.